Hi, I'm Maddie Weiner, editor of Tire Review magazine. And instead of being in our Continental Tire garage studio today, we're here at the Petty Museum in Level Cross, North Carolina, sitting down with the king himself, Richard Petty. Well, Richard, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, and awesome. I mean, this is our first time here, and we are just blown away. So many cool things here from your career.
You got to figure we've been here since 1949.
Right.
Okay, and a bunch of the stuff you see in the museum and stuff is just left over from that part, and then all 70 years of collecting stuff, well, accumulating stuff. So we got all kinds of different things, different cars, trophies, awards. Anybody gets a chance need to come by the museum in Level Cross.
For sure, yes. Well, we are witness to that, that's for sure. Now, I wanted to ask you about Petty's Garage. I know you founded it in 2008. Can you share the story of how Petty's Garage came to be?
Well, really, we used to have all the Petty enterprises all operated out of the home place here in Level Cross.
Yeah.
And in 08, 09 somehow, anyhow, we moved to Mooresville with the racing organization. So we had all the equipment, all the people here, plus there was 3 or 4 of the guys that worked here for a lot of years, didn't want to make the drive every day and all that. So I said, okay, we got this museum here. I got 6, 8 cars that need to be rebuilt, and these guys that built them in the first place. So I said, let's just go through some of the cars and start fixing them up for the museum. And then the first thing you know, some guy drives through and says, hey, can you do this to the car? Can you paint the car? Can you take my T-model and make it run again? And it's the first thing you know, we had Petty Garage. And it just grew from that part of it.
The partnership between Petty's Garage and Continental started in 2012. So how's that going?
It's going really great. I don't really know how it really happened, whether some of their people just dropped by and wanted a car worked on, or just come by to see the museum or what. And they got to talking to some of my guys, and first thing I know, they cut a deal to, do nothing but the Continental tires here. So it's been a heck of a good combination for us and hopefully for them, because, we got show trucks and stuff we take to different venues, some of the racetracks, a lot of car shows and stuff like that. So they've been really good to work with us on that particular part of the deal. And, then we had a bunch of cars that I had to have some new tires, so Continental was the way to go.
and you guys have worked on some pretty legendary builds together, Petty's Garage and Continental. One that comes to mind is the 1981 Buick Regal replica, which was a vehicle you won your 7th Daytona 500 victory with. So tell me about, I guess, one of your favorite builds that Petty's Garage has done with Continental.
Well, that was really a big deal.
Right.
We're working on our 79 championship car now, which is started a life, I think, as a 77 Chevrolet. And, they wanted one done. We said, look around, how you going to find one that's in decent shape? Finally found one somewhere here in North Carolina. And they brought the thing in and just completely disassembled it. And, we got the chassis out there that they all painted and got it all fixed up. And I think the body and stuff's in the body shop they're getting ready to do. So, that is really a big car in my arsenal because we won the championship with that car in '79. So it's always a special place. And they're building this car. It's going to be a race car replica, but it's going to be a street car. You'll be able to legally drive it up and down the street. So that's a little bit of a challenge too, to be it. People look at it from the outside, and it's a race car, and then when you get to looking at it, it's a road car. So they're going to do a good job out here.
Will you be driving it around here? Can we see you?
They won't let me drive. They've seen me drive before. So anytime they get new cars and stuff, they say, everybody can drive it but me. Well, I still got a little bit of racing in me, so some of these cars probably shouldn't be racing around with.
From your perspective and from your career, How important is a vehicle set of tires in racing?
Hey, it's where the rubber meets the road. I know everybody's heard that, but no matter how good the car is, how fast it is, what kind of springs you got in the car, what kind of driver you got, if the tires don't stick to the ground, you don't go anywhere. And you look at it that is, and if you watch races or go to the racetrack, you see some people kind of take off real fast with brand new tires, and then the other guys maybe take their tires a little easier, and by the end of the run, the guys that took off too fast are getting passed because these guys have conserved their tires, and so they make a long run. So it's so important to racing, but it's not just important to racing, it's important on the road. Same thing, because you got to have a tire that, can stand dry weather or gravel on the road or when it rains, so you got to have a tire that is fairly good on all different kinds of circumstances. And so that's where Continental comes in. They've got some really good tires. Of course, they've got specialty tires too. They've got a little bit of everything for everybody.
Can you explain from your experience how tire technology in race tires has changed over the years?
Well, yeah, really, everything was bi-supply tires. And, then our tire company in racing decided was going radial because everything on the street was going radial. So then they started developing a radial tire, and when they first developed it, it was so stiff, okay, it made the car not stick to the ground. In other words, the tires wasn't doing the job. So over a period of time, they've been able to take the radial tire and make it more flexible. So you can't really tell the difference between a radial and a regular tire now. So they've done a lot of improvement, and a lot of the improvement that come out of that racing stuff went into road tires. So it's kind of played, if this guy's doing it and it's working, I'm going to do it too. So that's the way it kind of works. And
I know there's a lot of, tire tracking technology too with, tracking how the tires have worn and stuff like that.
I know when I was growing up, if we had a set of tires that would go 7,000, 8,000 miles, you was tickled to death. Now it's 70,000, 80,000 miles before you even look at them.
Right.
That's how far they've come in the last 30 or 40 years on tires. And, the quietness of the tires, the ride quality of the tire, all that stuff is so much better than it used to be.
I did want to ask you too, do you have any interesting tire stories, either from your time as a driver or as a team owner?
I just know I blew a bunch of tires. Okay, I done one of those trick deals I was talking about a while ago. I took off too fast, too quick, and it's the tire development in the racing deal was hand in hand with what they did on the road.
Right.
So we used to blow tires, and then they got them pretty well done now. You might puncture one, but as far as just wearing the thing out and blowing them, that's days that have kind of passed.
Right, yes, of course. And you used to do, from what I understand, you used to do tire tests. You had one that was sort of interesting at Talladega, if I heard correctly from someone?
Well, we ran a lot of tire tests back in the mid-'60s, around 64, 65. And then they came with what they call an inner liner, so that if you blew the outside tire, the car didn't go all the way down. And so it's testing at Daytona, and they had some sharp things down the back stretch, and they said, okay, go out there and get up to speed and run over one and blow a tire. And just about the time I'd get ready to hit it, I'd turn. It was just an automatic thing. Don't run over nothing to blow a tire. And I think after a couple, 3 times, I finally got brave enough to hit one and blow a tire, and that really worked. And they still use that technology today.
So I'm curious, after your racing career, you transitioned to a team owner and a businessman, and your father created Petty Enterprises and was a businessman in his own right, as you are, of course. So what did you learn from your dad about running a business that you apply to your businesses today?
I wished I'd learned more from him, I'll tell you that. He was kind of a guy that looked at, if he was selling anything or whatever, he got on the other side and said, okay, I'm going to be the buyer. Will I buy this product? Will do I believe this guy's got the right product for me and all that stuff. So you just try to be honest with people. And, you know, sometimes you might not make quite as much money, but in the long run, you feel better about it, and you make it back on by doing other business because people believe in what you say and what you do.
And I'm curious too, did you have any challenges switching from a driver to, you know, a team owner and business owner?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you drove a race car for 30, 32 years or something like that. Then all of a sudden, you get out of the car and you're going to put somebody else in the car, and they never drive like what you would have done. And so it's hard to, from the driver's standpoint, that's been a driver, to watch his driver or watch any of the drivers, because, you know, you see them run and stuff, and what is he doing? Why is he doing that? You know, I would have never done that and all that stuff. And then I sat there and I said, golly, if I was just out there. And then all of a sudden, here comes a car in on a wrecker, and I said, that's the reason I'm not out there.
We work at Tire Review with a lot of different independent tire dealers across the country, across North America. So I'm curious, from your experience, what advice would you give to other shop owners to achieve success in today's pretty competitive environment?
It's a very competitive deal.
Yeah.
The deal is, when you're selling tires, you got to have a good tire, like a Continental. But the service gets you back, because most everybody's got a car or two. So they get new tires for one car. If they might like the tire, but they don't like the service. Okay? So the service is everything. When you're selling a competitive product, then the only thing then, this guy's got a good tire, this guy's got a good tire, the only thing that keeps you going back to this one deal is how they treat you. Okay? And as long as they treat you like you'd want to be treated, then, you know, you're going back there again.
Now, I did have some questions about engines for you. So with the work your team does at Petty's Garage, what are 3 aspects of building a car that you feel make it a great performance vehicle?
There's a lot of things that make it performance. First thing, you got to have a good tire on the car. Okay. Then you got to have good brakes before you ever think about an engine. Okay. But when you do good tires, good brakes and stuff, and then you put a big engine in the car, then you've got to modify the suspension to be able to handle the horsepower and what you're going to do with the car. So there's not a simple answer. It's just it's a combination of things to make a high performance car. And each area has to match the other area. So it's pretty competitive from that standpoint. And I think the boys here at Petty's Garage do a good job of matching what the customer wants. Mm-hmm. And then if they'll argue with him over some things that they know he don't want it that way in the long run. So in between, it always works out pretty good.
So what do you like most about performance engines today? And that's the first part of the question. Second part, what would your ideal engine include? Well,
you know, they've got so much stuff now. I mean, you raise the hood on one of these cars, you don't even see the engine.
Right.
Got all this electronic stuff, you know, but, you know, the fuel injection is a great addition to an engine. Then they got blowers that we put on the things, and, I mean, you know, they build engines here 1,000 horsepower. I said, what would you do? What would you do with 1,000 horsepower? You know what I mean? But some customers want it. But in the long run, it's just a kind of a deal that I guess probably, and I'm going to say the best race engine we ever had was a Hemi. The Hemi combustion chamber and all that just made a good combination, not only for a road car, but strictly for a race car. And so they're still using those. All the drag cars and all that stuff still use the same situation with all the Hemi deal. And a lot of the manufacturers have kind of copied that to a certain extent. And maybe half the thing is round or something. But, you know, all of them look at a perfect combustion chamber. And right now, the Hemi seems to be the closest thing that they can come up with.
What about your ideal engine? What would that include?
The ideal engine is what you want, what you want to put in a boat, or whether you want to put it on a road car, or whether you want to put it in a race car. So each one of those components would be different. as far as, so it's hard to say, what is the perfect engine. You'd have to have a perfect engine for whatever the application was.
So taking it a step further, what would your dream performance vehicle entail?
I guess I never really thought about it. You mean, because as the new cars come out, they get better and better and better. And I look back and talk with my buddies and stuff. We used to race up and down the road 40 years ago, thought we really had, a good car or a good handling car. And just any car now outruns them cars and outhandles the cars. So, the technology in the car business has been so great. And I guess the overall deal is that people are demanding more things to a car. It's not just something that'll get you from point A to point B. Now you got to have a TV in the car. You got to have a computer. With me, you got to have a GPS so I know where I'm at. So all the above. Air conditioned seats and steering wheels. I mean, it's just if you took a brand new car and took all those extras off, there wouldn't be much left.
If you were given the chance to race again during the years you were in your prime, or be in your prime and race today, what would you prefer and why?
I came along at the right time under the right circumstances with the right people. For me to compete today, I would have had to come through a different generation. So my generation would not adapt to what, and the same vice versa. The generation today couldn't go back and run the cars and stuff that we run because it's just a different upbringing. Okay, so you can't really compare what happened 20, 30 years ago in racing to what it is today. I do know that NASCAR's coming with their new car this year in 22, and it's going to be completely different than anything we've ever had before. Before they've tried to stay somewhere working with the manufacturers and stuff, somewhere where something stock. Okay, this year's cars is going to probably look more stock than they have in the past, but underneath the car, inside and stuff, it's strictly a race car. So it's not a NASCAR stock car, it's just a NASCAR car now.
What about NASCAR do you like today versus when you were racing? And then sort of the opposite of that question, what did you like better about when you raced versus today's NASCAR?
Well, it's a little bit different now. It's so computerized, I guess is what, so technical today.
Right, yep.
Back in the day, okay, when we were running 40, 30, 20 years ago, then the rules were pretty loose. Okay, so as long as you stayed somewhere in that border, it was okay. And you'd make a change on the car, and it might not be stock or none of that kind of stuff, but NASCAR didn't say nothing about it because it made a better race car. And over a period of time, they've just taken it and tightened it and tightened it and tightened it with all the way they can check the cars, the way NASCAR rules have tightened up. So you've got very, very little ingenuity now from the crew's standpoint because NASCAR is regulating all the rules. And so it's better for the racers in the long run because it's new and it's modern, and we need new fans, so we have to change with technology and the new generation to keep them interested in racing. Because if we went back and run 40-year-old cars, nobody'd be interested. So they like the new electronic stuff, the electronic dashes, and they can go to the race or stay at home and they can listen to the drivers talk and all that stuff. So all that stuff is so much different. I'm going to tell you, like my son Kyle says, the only thing about racing today, as it's always been, is they throw the green flag when it starts, and they throw the checker flag when it's over. Everything else is different. so that's the only thing racing is the same.
Yeah. So you're saying you feel the sport of racing in general just has to evolve with the times.
It's got to go. It's got to go with the times, just like like anything else. It doesn't make any difference. Everything has to go to the next level, and all of us want better things for our kids than what we had. So we strive to push them to go to the next level.
So, Richard, you've obviously had a storied and long career in NASCAR. Is there like a single race or a single moment that stands out to you the most? It's a big question, I know.
That would be hard. I mean, winning the 200th race, Daytona, in front of the President of the United States, winning on the last green flag lap, that was pretty much the icing on the cake. Yeah. But if I hadn't won the first race, it would just been another race. Or if I hadn't won the 10th race or the 100th race. So it took everything to get to that point. So that was a pretty big day. But the first Daytona win was a big deal. First championship, the first race. I mean, so the overall deal, it's hard to say this was the most important or the one you look back at the most. I just sort of clump it all together and said, that's the way it was.
I am curious, when you're, thinking back and driving in the many vehicles that you've driven, was there anything that you thought about during a race or any rituals that you did before the race or anything along those lines?
Had no superstitions or nothing. We've been fortunate that we've won races with 7 different models, right, different kinds of cars. And that's the first too, what I mean. But you don't really think about it. You just think about you won in the 43 car, and then you just let it go at that. So you don't really think about whether it's Chevrolet or a Dodge or a Ford or Buick or whatever. So it was just a Petty Enterprise car, and that's what it was.
You used to race. With your father, and I know Petty GMS Motorsports is bringing back the 42 and 43. Car. Yeah, how does that feel?
My dad started with a 42 car, and then when I came along, we just picked up the 43, and over a period of time, we've had the 40 number, 41, 42, 43. Then Kyle had the 44 number. Then my grandson Adam had the 45 number, and now I've got another grandson called Moffett. His number's 46. But to bring the 42 number back to the Petty organization, when Kyle first started running, I had the 43 car. He ran the 42 car. Okay, mm-hmm. So then he kept the number. Then when he moves over to another race team, he takes the number with him. Well, that number stayed with that team, and that team was sold to another team, and then sold to another team, and they kept the number. And this past year, or this coming year, that company didn't pick up the 42 number. So now the 42s went all the way around the wheel. It's going back into the Petty operation. So I think everybody, especially all the Petties, really feel good that, hey, Granddaddy's number's coming home. That makes it good.
That's awesome. Well, Richard, I have one more question for you. From your perspective, who are a few race car drivers today you think are doing things the right way? You put
me in the corner here, that. It's hard to say. And where we're at right now, we're having a changing of the guard. Yeah. In other words, the guys that's been racing and winning races for the last 8 or 10 years, half of them have retired or getting ready to retire. So you got a whole different crowd of people that grew up in a different atmosphere, a different time, got different needs, wants, mm-hmm. And so it's hard to say. Here's a guy out of the grandstand wants to drive a race car. Might be the greatest guy in the world, but does he get a chance to do it? You know what I mean? And so it's just a matter of things are changing. And like I say, the cars are changing, but the drivers are changing. The face of NASCAR is changing. And so as far as picking out any driver, I can go back and pick out what I thought was the best drivers that there's ever been that competed against me. But I can't compare them with some of the drivers that come along after me because I never raced with them. They look good amongst the people they're racing with. Okay, and now that crowd will go home. The Jimmy Johnsons and Jeff Gordons and stuff. Those boys will go away, and then there'll be another crowd that comes in that takes up their gap, and hopefully they can act as good as some of the guys that's going away.
Very interesting. Well, Richard, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.